Okay, now that we've evaluated someone's skills during this process, now we move on to the next step, evaluating their personality. Someone's personality makes all the difference in the world. It's going to make a difference with how hard they work, how easy it is to work with you, and basically how their overall job performance is probably going to turn out. It's not enough to have someone with just a great skill set. You need someone with the personality to match to make a great team member. And vice versa, by the way. You don't want someone that has a great personality but has no skills. Sometimes they can be trained and be open to it, but you got to be careful, and hopefully you want to look for someone that has both. Remember, you can remain very picky in this process and find that right person. The first part of the process of analyzing their personality is to simply carefully analyze all the communication we have with them. The first step is carefully analyzing all the communication you have with them. Look at how they respond to emails, and if they do it in a timely fashion, and how they treat you and what they say to you. Is there that enthusiasm there? What do they say about themselves in how they answer questions, and how they answer emails, and how, if you ever chat or Skyped with them at any point in the process, which we'll get to, if there's any of that during this whole process, think about that, because all those things say something about them and their personality. You need to ask them these types of questions. What are your expectations for this job? This can give you some really good insights into that kind of person. They can tell you, they're so excited about the opportunity, they've been looking for something to be a part of, they loved what you said in your initial emails or job listing information about this job, and so they expect this, they expect this. That can give you some great insights into the type of person they are. And of course, ask them how they prefer to work with your team. Ask them this: do you prefer daily communication reports or weekly reports, and why? It's important to note there's no right answer for this. You can find great workers that'll answer daily or weekly. However, you can usually get some really good insights into this. If they say, I prefer daily communication reports because if I'm not communicated with on a regular basis and told what to do, I don't know, I can't get any work done. That's a danger sign. Whereas someone else could say the same answer of daily reports, that they prefer daily reports, but they could say this: I'd like daily communication reports, but I want someone to know what I'm doing and how much progress I'm making so they can keep up with me, because I usually like to work at a fast pace. So I find if I don't update people on a regular basis, they don't realize how far ahead I've gotten. So there's no right or wrong answer, but that question itself can give you some really good insights into that person's work ethic. Also ask them, do they work better if they've been given exact instructions, or do they just enjoy figuring things out? Again, no right or wrong answer for this question, but it can give you some good insights. They may say, oh, I need exact instructions or I can never do any work. That's typically a danger sign. On the other side of things, if they say, oh, I don't like people telling me what to do, I can figure everything out on my own, that's a danger sign too. Obviously what you want is somewhere in between, where they say, oh, I don't mind being told what to do, but sometimes I like to use my own creativity to figure out what the best solution would be. That's the kind of worker you ultimately want to find. And then ask them, what do you feel your last boss's strengths and weak areas are? This is a common type of a question for, if you've ever read any books on interviewing people, this is a common question that a lot of those types of systems and methods use, asking what they thought about their last boss. But it's an important question to ask, because you'll get some interesting insights into what they liked and didn't like about working for, that last person or who they currently work for. Now, on the strength side, this is something for you to note, because whatever they say their boss's strengths were, they may give you some good indications on how you can get the best work out of this person. Make some notes of that. Be conscious of what they're saying as far as what the strengths were. And then, of course, pay attention to the weak areas and look for danger signs. If they say, oh, my boss was horrible, he never told me what to do enough, or he never praised me, you got to look for those things. So that question is very important and can really help you hone in on their personality, just like all these other questions. But their personality is absolutely critical to this entire process. Now let's take a quick look at a sample email that you can use when you get to the part about needing to evaluate someone's personality. So now in the process, we've contacted them initially, or they answered a job listing, and then when we thought they were good enough, we got back to them and had them answer a bunch of questions so we could evaluate their skills. And now we've gotten those answers back, and now we're at this point. So we start out by saying, hey, in their first name, thanks for all the great answers. I really think you might be the person for this job, smiley face. Now this is, of course, if we like their answers to the skills evaluation. I mean, if you didn't and you think they're not qualified, then you don't ever get to this step. You basically just send them an email that says, hey, thanks so much for taking the time to answer all that. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't think you're the right candidate for the job, but we'll keep your resume on file, and we'll contact you again in the future should we have something that we think would be a good fit for you. But now that you're saying this email because so far the skills evaluation looked good and everything else seems to be good, you need to state, I really think you might be the person for this job. You got to give them hope at this point because you're putting them through quite a bit of work to evaluate them. So, and of course you're telling them the truth. At this point you do think they might be the right person for the job because you like their skills and everything else they've had to say. Otherwise you wouldn't be sending them this. So that's why we start by saying that. Thanks for all the great answers. Of course you're being nice to them. I really think you might be the person for this job. And then you say, if you don't mind, we just wanted to know a few more things about you. Again, you're pre-qualifying them more. You're really making them want this job, and that's good. Some people may get to this stage and they just, may not respond or just put it off because they think it's too much work. Well, if they think it's too much work, then they're definitely not the right person for the job. So it has a lot to do with how fast they respond and what their attitude is, just like I've been talking this whole time. So pay attention to that. But we basically say, if we don't mind, we just want to know a few more things about you. What are your expectations for this job opportunity? I covered that a little bit in the presentation already, but you want to see what they say about the potential job opportunity. That will tell you a lot of things. And then, of course, you ask that question, how do you prefer to work as part of our team? Daily or weekly communication reports, and why? And then notice the copy here that I use. Some people work better with one or the other, so just curious how you prefer to work. You need to say that, and that's why it's in the copy, like everything else is for a reason. So they don't think it's just a trick question that there's a right or wrong answer. Because when people are disarmed to basically speak freely and just give an answer to how they actually feel and what they think the answer is right for them, they're apt to be more honest. And that's what you want here is honesty. And then we ask, do you prefer to be given exact instructions on what to do, or do you often enjoy figuring things out for yourself? We covered this already in the presentation, but it's asking for that to find out what type of personality traits they have. And then finally that question, what do you feel your last boss's strengths and weaknesses are? And of course the email has this copy included. And don't worry, whatever you say will be held in complete confidence. That needs to be said because obviously they don't want you to go back to their boss or call for a reference and say, oh, they said this stuff about you. A lot of people are afraid to be honest. Again, it's all about disarming them so they will be honest. And then from the honesty, you really find out what kind of potential worker they are. So that's it. That's a great sample email that you can send when you get to the process of wanting to evaluate their personality. Simple, just a few questions, but the answers you get back, and of course how fast they answer, says a lot about that person.